This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of Clear Waters, and my co-host Nick Petros is online with me. Nick, we got a great guest today. It's a friend that I met probably 6 months ago, and just wanted to circle back and just give him another chance to really share a story on our podcast, and I just know that he's going to bring some value to us today. So, Nick, how you doing?
Doing good. Staying up. Super excited to meet Kirk. This has been a fun evening.
It certainly is. Our guest today is Kirk Penn, all the way from down under. Kirk, thanks for joining us from the other side of the globe.
Thank you, Nick, Kevin. Thank you very much. Awesome to be here.
So, Nick, I do this every week. I mean, I can do the bio, but I have found that the guest does it much better than I do. So, give us just a really quick background on Kirk Penn and what you do.
Yep, absolutely. So, look, essentially, I work in IT as an IT consultant, and over the last 8 to 10 years, I've built a practice where we help organizations to align to good practice and best practice around running their IT. So that includes everything from their service desk through to the way they manage change and manage service providers, the multiple service providers that they have in their back end. And really, we use a methodology which has started in the 1980s called ITIL. And that's evolved over the last 40 years now, but we use parts of that to embed good practice in organizations and fundamentally drive efficiencies and help organizations to improve.
Well, that's one of the reasons we brought you on, is because you're speaking the language of what we're trying to solve here, and the theme of this podcast is how do you find clarity in an otherwise murky world. So we love to just have our guests just kind of share a story that we've asked them to kind of prepare it a little bit ahead of time, but just share a story of a time where clarity was not readily present or it wasn't just transparent.
Absolutely. Look, this is an everyday occurrence in my world. So it's really about kind of moving through those murky waters as best you can. But look, I've got a couple of examples. I think the first one was, it was a bit of enlightening for me more than anything. I just finished a 6-month engagement with a client, and they said to me, Kirk, now we're at the back of this, can you honestly put your hand on your heart and tell me that whatever we've delivered and whatever you've produced, could you have done that within the first few days of the engagement? And I said yes. Hand on heart, I could have. And they said, well, why has it taken us 6 months? And I said, well, it's not about me, it's about you, and it's about your journey and about your teams. And there's no way that they would have got it within the first few days. I got it because I work in this industry and I know what I'm doing. But the fact is that it's taken me 6 months to impart this on you and get you to a place where you're actually self-sustaining. So I reflected on that because I felt that it probably wasn't the best from a relationship perspective to share. We went on and we got a lot more business and actually strengthened the relationship from that. But it was I guess from my perspective, it was a really good reflection point for me to go, well, we actually know this stuff from day one, but it's about the journey. I guess the other example I wanted just to quickly share with you is that we went into an engagement where a CIO at the time had an issue around operational efficiencies. And for some reason, he had done his yearly budget and had basically targeted to be like a 200K problem to solve. Now, when we got involved, started to scratch around and do some discovery, I knew that we were sort of probably at least 5, maybe even up to 10 times as much as that to get this problem solved if we really wanted it to stick. So as we went on, that was a pretty hard conversation to have with him, and I knew it wasn't something we could have straight away. So it was just really, again, I think anchoring back to what we're talking about here, there was a tiny line of sight through some pretty very, very murky waters, I guess. And it was just about honing in on that and getting real clarity and starting to broaden it out until he could share that tiny bit of light at the end of the tunnel. I'm happy to talk through how we did that, or
Well, I want to go back to the first example just for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that because even when you were telling the story, you were like, how do I answer that question he just asked me? It's one of those you know those moral dilemmas. You say, okay, am I going to be truthful with him or am I going to spin this? You know, and
Yeah.
I love the fact that I mean, I've known you and I know that this is your character as well, but you answered him honestly. You said, absolutely, yeah, we could have done this in a very short period of time. But it's not just about, me discovering the problem. It's about you understanding, the problem and how you're going to have to continue to walk out the solution. And I love the way you framed that. And I mean, it just, that is if you don't hear anything else, listeners, other than that point that he just made right then, I mean, that's worth that's our gold nugget that we can hone in on. But yeah, Nick, what are the thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a crass analogy, I guess, but like leading a horse to water. I think there's a lot of change going on, particularly with larger organizations trying to compete in the modern economy. And Kirk, I love your feedback. And I think both of those examples represented leaders that didn't quite know what the end point was going to be until they got there. And I think somehow your mastery got them to stick with you for 6 months to actually see the benefits. A lot of what we're working on with Dash is with folks who don't even know if there will be benefits. So we have to visualize it to get them to start and get them to try. But without using a visual tool like ours, something that's somewhat of a gimmick before it's in practice. How do you approach change like that when people know something has to happen, but like both of your examples, they don't know how much it's going to cost and they don't know how long it's going to take. How do you show them the way?
Well, there's various ways, but it's certainly a really tough gig. I have to be honest about that. And I think fundamentally what we need to do is kind of get back to the basics. Now, at the same time that they've got this thought in their head that it's X, Y, Z, they actually don't have any appetite to hear me tell them that it's not. So what I find is that, those regular kind of updates showing progress are absolutely critical. And being really respectful of their time as well. So I'm not going to kind of in those early stages be kind of trying to pull them out of their rhythm for hours at a time to show them something that is not quite real. Mm-hmm. So what I like to do is say, what are the problems that we've got going on? What's the heartbeat? What's actually what are the tangible things that we can perhaps circle back with and show some improvement around? And so we start to sort of snap off a few of those things and then be able to circle back and say, well, you've got some real issues in these areas. We can't solve world hunger at this stage, but we can start to give you some momentum. It gives us momentum as well. And what I find is that I call it airtime. That airtime that you get with that executive and that decision maker starts to extend, and that relationship starts to really solidify, and you get some credibility, and it's to be respected as well. So even though you can perhaps get a couple of hours of their time, you want to make sure that you don't take off as much as what you only take off as much as you need. So that's some of the tactics that I've used that have given us a really good place to be able to build on those.
Yeah, I just watched. Are you a Denzel Washington fan by any chance?
No.
He has a bunch of action movies that follow a similar line, but one of them is called The Equalizer.
Okay, great. I'm going to watch that.
It's a shameless action movie, but it's amazing, and I'm a sucker for it. But one of the quotes from the movie that really stuck with me that he said when he's coaching one of the minor characters who's training to be a security guard, he says, "Progress, not perfection." Because the guy keeps beating himself up over not getting it right every single time he tries. And it seems like you really embraced that and brought it into your process because you're not going to get someone there in 3 days. That's awesome. That's fantastic.
So Nick, the idea you mentioned about kind of giving say a C-suite exec kind of regular updates, regular progress updates, or um, how long in your business career, how long or how far were you into that before that light came on and you thought, this is how I need to approach this, instead of trying to just always point out problem solution, problem solution?
Look, I learned it reasonably early that time. I call this thing airtime. Your airtime is just so valuable. And you know this as well, Kevin. And when you press record, man, you're on. And so it's just being a bit smarter about having and being appreciative of that airtime. And again, sort of less is more. Like Ringo Starr. Like, he just played everything nice and straight. He never had to show. So I kind of use those principles to think, well, less is more, and let's just streamline this, and I'll say things that I would like to really have an impact. And I think the other part to that as well that's worked quite well for me is, and it kind of sounds strange, but I actually don't mind looking stupid. It's a skill that I've kind of learned that, and it's not so much at the executive level, but certainly their management and their teams down will often laugh at me and often think, what is that guy up to? But I don't mind, because it's doing two things. One, I'm learning. And number two, I'm kind of putting what I think is right on the side and letting them know that, hey, look, we're all just human here. So I'm not sure how that's worked for you, if you've kind of used those tactics, but it's certainly one that I've used, and I actually don't mind looking stupid.
But you got to be mature enough to be able to do that. I mean, that comes with time. That comes with some. You I mentioned to Nick earlier, but probably before we turned the recorder on, about you may have a few battle scars, that
Yeah.
you've lived through those minor skirmishes that you've had in the past that have taught you some things. But as we're kind of landing the plane here, I mean, guys, what's the big takeaway here? I've gotten numerous things I've written down as Kirk and Nick both were talking, but what's kind of the one big idea that you would kind of extract out of this? Out of the couple of examples that you mentioned, Kirk, the stories that you brought to us today. If people were wanting to take something away, what's that one nugget that you would say, hey, this is what I really want you to kind of hone in on that makes the most sense?
Kevin, I know you and I have talked about this before, but look, I think my number one point would be you're still dealing with people at the end of the day. And so with all the tech and all the digital transformation that's going on, from a simple form, we're human beings with specific needs. And it's really about that connection, being respectful of the connection, but also making sure that whatever you've got to say is relevant, is pointed, and can really connect with people as well. I'm certainly not in the business of trying to kind of sell things that just don't work. I'm in the business of making improvements, and that's what I feel passionate about. So, and that starts with people.
That's the common thread of the two guys that I'm chatting with on this call. They both that is certainly in your DNA. So, Nick, land the plane for us here.
Yeah, so I've been riffing silently here. To paraphrase Kirk, I think momentum gets you across the finish line. I think when you're trying to solve a big problem and there isn't a clear end to it going in, but you're working with someone like Kirk who knows the way, they can get you there by showing you the steps you need to take to get there, and counting each one of those is kind of a mini win. I think that's a super valuable learn that I'll carry across a lot of what I do. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
In the immortal words of Denzel, it's progress over perfection. As we land the plane today on another episode of Clear Waters, the podcast that offers clarity in an otherwise murky world. Guys, thanks for taking the time to chat with us today. And it's been another great 15-minute masterclass on transparency and clarity and logistics in a very cluttered world. Guys, thanks a lot for talking to us today.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Kirk.